My daughter shouted, "Either pay the rent or leave." But what she didn't know was that I secretly owned the house. For 20 years, I'd hidden my lottery fortune, paying her rent for a room in my own home. 1 week later, I sold it, exposing the truth and forever changing our family. This is the story of why I did it. Hi everyone, I'm David, the storyteller on the Family Tales channel. Here, I'll share stories about love, conflicts, betrayal, and infidelity within American families. These stories offer a deep look into relationships and the challenges families face. Stay tuned and explore with me. If you love emotional stories and want to uncover the hidden secrets in families, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our videos. I wake up at 6 every morning. It's difficult to break old habits, especially after 77 years of life. In the kitchen, Gina is preparing breakfast for her husband Noah when I hear the refrigerator door crash. She knocks on my door 40 minutes later, not out of courtesy, but to make sure I haven't passed away while I've been asleep. My joints hurt as I slowly sit up on the bed. Originally a guest bedroom on the ground floor, my room was renovated for me 5 years ago when I moved in with my daughter. Moved in is a humorous term. Although no one is aware of it, I have actually lived in this house my entire life. The time of the knock on the door is perfect. "Earl? You're still alive?" Gina sounds more irritated than worried. I respond, "Not yet," as I do each morning. In 20 minutes is breakfast. Avoid being late. Without waiting for a response, I hear her walk away. Gina, my 42-year-old youngest daughter, has always been a challenging kid. At the age of 15, Gina's mother, my late wife Vivian, passed away. Perhaps that is the cause of her aloofness. She accuses me of surviving while her mother did not, or perhaps she is simply that type of person. Long ago, I stopped trying to find an answer. I take my time getting dressed, picking out a crisp, long-sleeved shirt. The house is usually frigid. Despite her husband Noah earning a nice wage as a financial analyst, Gina saves money on heating. They both have an obsession with saving money. Every penny in the account, every additional item under scrutiny. If they ever needed money, I sometimes believe they would know a lot about it. I gaze into the mirror, an elderly man with deep creases around his eyes and thinning gray hair. My electrician's hands have minor burns that have left them bruised and scarred. I was employed in the city's power plant for 45 years as an electrical engineer. Sincere labor, consistent income, and a small pension. That's what everyone believes anyway. Sometimes it feels like the secret I've been keeping for 20 years weighs more than all the electrical lines I've ever installed. I won $1,800,000 in the lotto in 2005. I kept it a secret, not my spouse. At the time, she was already ill. Not my children, the children in particular. I own 2 of them. Weston, my eldest son, and Gina. Both are pampered and constantly in need of money. Each time they received financial assistance from Vivian and me, they returned for more. I was aware that they would waste the gains within a few years and then blame me for not having enough money if they learned about it. So I took the only logical action. I said nothing. Transfer the funds to an account with a favorable interest rate. And I paid $600,000 for this Slidell home a year later after Vivian left. 3 levels, roomy, in a pleasant area. But I told the kids I found a good rental instead of listing it. Gina yells, "You're late, Earl," from downstairs. I walk out of the room and slowly down to the kitchen. At the table, Noah is already seated and gazing at his clipboard. He hardly gives me a nod. Although frigid, our relationship is correct. I'm just his wife's father to him, an elderly man who must be put up with. I sit down in my customary seat and say, "Good morning." Gina presents me with a bowl of porridge. Every day, oatmeal on water is the same. Half a banana without butter. We both know it's about saving money. but she insists it's for your health. Weston and the kids are coming over today. Haven't you remembered? As she pours herself a cup of coffee, Gina asks, "Unlike the last time, I hope you don't spend the entire day in your room." I stir the murky stuff on my plate and respond, "I'm not hiding from my own son, so why didn't you talk to him much over Christmas?" Gina folds her arms across her torso. "You don't love him, he believes." I raise my gaze from my dish. When was the last time I received a call from him that wasn't an attempt to solicit money? Without taking his eyes from the TV, Noah snorts. Gina gives him a stern look. He has a lot on his plate. I shrug, but he always finds time to call when he needs money for a new vehicle or a warehouse expansion, even though he has 2 children and his own logistics company. What a wonderful coincidence. Gina's expression hardens. You're not being fair. You are important to all of us. When you are unable to live alone any longer, who took you in? Who brings you to the doctor, does your washing, and prepares your meals? I wish to state that I live in my own home, not yours. However, I simply nod, like I have done countless times before. For having a roof over my head, I am thankful. That's right. Gina considers the conversation to be ended and nods happily. Just then, my granddaughter Avery walks into the kitchen. She is the only person in this house who occasionally speaks to me out of duty. She is 19 years old and a freshman at the nearby college. Greetings to all. She approaches to give me a cheek kiss while grinning. "Grandpa, how was your sleep?" "As always, sweetheart. I counted sheep for half the night and my aching feet for the other half." I watch as Gina rolls her eyes and Avery chuckles. My sense of humor has never been grasped by her. "Will you be attending class today?" my granddaughter asks. "Until 3, yes. After that, I have to work until 8 at the coffee shop." She grabs an apple from the vase and pours herself a cup of coffee. "If you would want to go for a walk in the park, I can come get you tomorrow. Grandpa needs to accomplish more essential things, Avery." Gina steps in. "Tomorrow, the plumber will visit to inspect his bathroom. It leaks all the time. I say I can do both. Typically, plumbers arrive in the morning." Gina says, "We don't know the exact time. You should spend the entire day at home." I don't argue. It's useless. Gina always finds some excuse to keep me at home. She probably fears that I will die on the street and that she will have to face the repercussions. Avery glares at her mother, but she doesn't say anything either. She's gotten better at choosing her battles. She gulps down her coffee and says, "Okay, I have to go. Tonight, I'll see you." She slips out of the kitchen after giving me another peck on the cheek. The house seems to be growing colder when the front door bangs. Noah gets up from the table and collects his belongings. He reminds Gina to check the electricity bill. Last month, it was suspiciously high. I can see what he's thinking when his eyes pause on me. The elderly man spends his days consuming electricity while sitting at home. I say that I rarely switch on the lights and that I only watch TV at night. No one is pointing the finger at you, Earl. Noah fakes a smile. Simply put, the expenditures are becoming bigger, and your pension isn't really a band-aid solution, is it? I nod while contemplating my bank account, which has more than $1 million in funds that nobody is aware of. I occasionally question why I keep that a secret, but then I recall the expression in Gina's eyes when she discusses money, how calculating and greedy she is, or how Weston's phone calls always begin with, "How's your health, Daddy?" and concluding with an appeal to borrow several $1,000s. Gina begins to clear the table when Noah leaves. "On Monday, do you remember to pay the rent?" Without glancing at me, she asks. "I remember," I respond. I pay my rent each month. I deposit $2,000 into Gina's account, which she believes to be the landlord's rent. Actually, all I'm doing is transferring money between my accounts. The landlord is me. She also says to remember the utilities. "Your share is $350 this month." I give a silent nod. Even though I use very little water and electricity, my share keeps increasing. Gina believes it's reasonable. I use their benefits and live in their home after all. Following breakfast, I return to my room. It's cozy despite being little. A desk, a chair by the window, a bed, and a bookcase filled with detective novels that I circled through again. There's an old radio receiver on the table that I fixed myself. Fixing outdated devices is one of my last remaining delights. I take a seat in the chair and gaze at the backyard through the window. In Slidell, spring was usually lovely. Birds coming back from the south, new foliage, and flowering magnolias. Vivian cherished this season. We used to frequently relax on our former home's back porch while sipping tea and taking in the scenery. She wouldn't have approved of my lies, I think, sometimes. All of Vivian's interactions were direct and brutally honest. "You've become a reclusive old fox, Earl Cunningham," she would say. However, I recall how concerned she was about Weston and Gina, and how she sobbed when they returned for money without considering her well-being. She once told me, "We've raised selfish people," and I hoped she would get it. I'm startled out of my thoughts by the sound of a car approaching. I gaze out the window. Weston's SUV was black. After my son exits the vehicle, his wife Lauren and their two adolescent children, Cora and Ethan, follow. Despite living just 20 minutes away, they hardly ever come. Despite being 50, Weston appears older, fuller, balding, and always uptight. Even though his logistics company has been on the verge of bankruptcy for years, he continues to send his children to private schools and purchase pricey cars. I walk out of the room to greet them. Gina is already giving her brother a hug as she opens the door. "I'm so happy you're here, Weston." When she addresses her brother, her voice rises an octave. "How you've changed, kids." Without taking their eyes off their phones, the teenagers mutter pleasantries. After exchanging pleasantries, Lauren gives Gina a hug. Weston then notices me. "Hello, Dad." He approaches and gives me a clumsy hug. "How are you feeling?" "Still alive," I reply, grinning. "Son, it's nice to see you." We enter the living area. The children instantly settle down on the couch and gaze at their phones. Gina and Lauren head to the kitchen to talk about a new diet plan. I'm alone with Weston. Even though I already know the answer, I inquire how things are going. "It's difficult," he sighs. "Customers are asking more for the same amount of money, and competition is increasing." "Dad, I was thinking, you know." He speaks more softly. "Have you any extra money? We risk losing the Blue Ridge shipping contract until I improve my fleet of trucks." It's there. Not even 5 minutes had passed. "You understand my predicament, Weston." "I pay for Gina's accommodation and utilities with my pension." "Yes, I am aware." He gives a brief nod. "However, you might have some money saved up. Is there something reserved for a rainy day? When the contract begins to turn a profit, I will repay it with interest. The same youngster who requested money for a new bike because the previous one wasn't cool enough is my 50-year-old son. Same tone, same appearance. I don't have any savings, Weston." His expression gets gloomy. I understand. I was just curious, though. The remainder of the visit is spent in a tense environment. I seldom ever hear from Weston. The kids completely disregard my presence. Citing some pressing business, they hastily pack up and depart after lunch. Gina turns to face me as the door shuts behind them. To him, "What did you say?" He appeared distressed. The fact is, I lacked the funds to support his enterprise. Gina gives a headshake. "Must you be so heartless? He is your son. His goal is to keep the company afloat. Additionally, I'm attempting to finish my pension before the end of the month, which I'm providing you in part, by the way." Gina draws a tiny line with her lips. You reside in my home. You utilize my electricity and food. If you didn't pay, wouldn't it be strange? I'm in your house, I think. How effortlessly she has taken my belongings. How boldly she states that I should pay for the privilege of residing in the home I purchased with my own funds. Naturally, I say aloud, it's all fair. I sit in my room and listen to vintage jazz on the radio in the evening when the house is quiet, out of the way, so as not to wake Gina and Noah. I can hear them talking about my ingratitude and intransigence over the wall, how I failed to assist my own son, despite the fact that I must have hidden something. I gaze upon my image in the window pane, an elderly man grinning bitterly. I've maintained a secret for 20 years. I've had a double life for 20 years. I ask me this sometimes. Was it worthwhile? Would being honest from the start have been preferable? Then I recall the avaricious sparkle in Weston's eyes, Gina's calculating coldness, and I understand. No, I made the correct decision. They wouldn't have been better with the money. It would have vanished in the blink of an eye. At moments like these, I particularly miss Vivian. She served as my constant compass, my conscience. Now, what would she say? Would she be in favor of me or against me? Around 9 o'clock, Avery arrives home. Her soft knock on my door is audible. "Grandfather, are you conscious?" I respond, "Come on in, sweetheart." Despite being exhausted from a hard day, she manages to grin as she enters the room. She sits on the edge of my bed and asks how my day went. "Your uncle stopped by," I reply. "He requested funds for trucks." Avery gives an eye roll, as usual. He doesn't just appear, does he? I give a shrug. He has his own issues. She frowns. "That's no excuse to use you." Mom feels the same way. Both of them believe you owe them money. I'm sometimes in awe at Avery's insight. At the age of 19, she perceives things that adults in their 40s and 50s do not. We both know that's not really accurate, but I say, your mom takes care of me. The money you give her matters to her. Avery gives a headshake. I apologize. I'm not trying to be critical of Mom, but she ought to treat you better. I grasp her hand and smile. I see your granny in you. Even when it was inconvenient, she was always honest. Avery grinned. I wish I had a memory of her. She died when I was 4 years old. I think she would have been proud of you. The only person in this family who isn't preoccupied with money is you. She laughs, perhaps because I've never had much of it. Obsessing over something you don't have is difficult. We continue our conversation about her studies, her work at the coffee shop, and the book she is currently reading. She yawns and stands up after that. I should get into bed now. Tomorrow, I have to rise early. She leans in to give me a cheek kiss. Grandfather, good night. Avoid being harmed by them. After she goes, I spend a lot of time sitting in the chair and gazing out the window into the darkness. In situations like this, I feel like I should at least be honest with Avery. She should be aware that her impoverished grandfather will leave her a tiny wealth someday. However, it would be unfair to her if she had to hide my secret from her own parents. No, waiting is preferable. She will graduate from college and be back on her feet in a few more years. Then perhaps the truth will come out. I'll keep playing the part of the elderly father who relies on his daughter's generosity and lives on a pension in the interim. When I switch on the lights throughout the day, I'll put up with the sneering glances and pay the rent on my own home. It's an odd life, full of deception and pretense. But I can live with it, as long as I can stay in my room in peace, listening to jazz and thinking about Vivian. I woke up on Sunday morning with a headache. The sound of a lawnmower outside my window awakened me up. Every day at 8 a.m., the neighbor across the street mows his lawn. Regardless of the season, Sundays are sharp. Reaching for the medications I normally keep on my nightstand, I fought to sit up on the bed. Pills are becoming as much a part of my life as morning coffee at my age. I could hear Gina and Noah conversing in the kitchen through the wall. I could make out the words, bills and troubles, even though their voices seemed muted. Once more, they are discussing money. Despite making enough money with Noah, Gina is preoccupied with conserving money. There are moments when I believe it's the only thing they truly care about. I dressed slowly and walked out of the room. When I entered the doorway, the conversation in the kitchen paused for a second. I said, "Good morning," and made my way to the coffee maker. With a calculator and a pile of documents, including bank statements, bills, and receipts, Gina was seated at the table. Noah folded his arms across his chest and stood beside the window. "We were just talking about you, Earl," Noah replied in a serious tone. "Remember that tomorrow is the due date for your rent?" Trying not to come across as irritated, I poured myself a cup of coffee. Every month, the same thing happens. I remembered. Today, I'll send the money. Noah said that the electricity tariff increased once more. This month, you will receive $400 as your part. My coffee nearly choked me. $400? It was $350 last month. Inflation, Earl, Noah remarked, sounding like he was telling a toddler the obvious. The cost of everything is rising. Additionally, you've been turning on lights and watching TV at home more often. I protested that I rarely watch TV and only turn on the lights when absolutely necessary. "The meter doesn't lie," Gina said, continuing to focus on her documents. "We can install a separate meter for your room if you feel that it is excessive." I realized there was no point in arguing. Even if it meant twisting the facts to get more money from me, they would always find a way. There was no way to verify my long-held suspicion that they were overcharging me for my portion of the utility bills. "Okay, so at last," I said, $400 is $400. Gina gave a happy nod, as though she had just secured a significant agreement. Noah gave me a phony, worried touch on the shoulder. "Man, we all need to tighten our belts. The times are hard." As I considered the million in my account, I gave a small nod. Difficult times. If only they were aware. I walked outside to stretch a little after breakfast. The neighbors were out on their lawns on this nice day, some cleaning their cars and others caring for their flowers. The typical lives of regular people. I wonder if their relationship with their children is also so complex, or was I the only one who was fortunate? I relished the sun as I strolled along the sidewalk. Our area is full of big, well-kept homes with immaculate lawns and well-kept bushes. The average middle class, trying to appear wealthier than they actually are. With 3 stories, a large front porch, and a backyard with a view of a small pond, my house is among the biggest on the street. The house is excellent. Unfortunately, there isn't much happiness in it. "Good morning, Mr. Cunningham." Our neighbor, Harper Dwight, was on the right when I turned around. He works for an insurance company and is a gregarious man in his 50s. When we cross paths on the street, we occasionally exchange a few words. I said, "Good morning, Harper." "The day is lovely, isn't it? Delectable." He lowered his voice and moved closer. "Did you hear the news? The Browns' home is up for sale. They're requesting over $1 million. Really?" Despite my lack of interest in local rumors, I continued the chat out of politeness. "Yes. And what do you know? It has already been viewed a few times." Harper was obviously having fun in his informant role. "There is a lot of interest, according to the realtor. People are becoming more and more interested in our community. The cost is soaring." I nodded while considering my own home. How much is my property worth now if the Browns can get $1 million for a house that is smaller than mine? 20 years ago, I paid $600,000 for it. Since then, Slidell's real estate market has experienced significant growth. Have you considered selling? Harper asked abruptly. For the three of you, the house is enormous. Keeping it organized must be difficult. I grinned. Harper, it's not mine. All I'm doing is renting my daughter's room. I had been telling the same falsehood for years. I began to believe it myself at times. Harper nodded. Oh yeah, of course. I apologize for forgetting. Tell your daughter that I know a wonderful realtor in case she ever decides to sell. Actually, my brother-in-law, his area of expertise is luxury real estate. I'll make sure to let her know. I lied, bid Harper farewell, and went on my stroll. I had never before given the idea of selling my house any thought. Why sell the house where I had spent so many years? However, after speaking with Harper, the thought had become ingrained in my thoughts. What if the house is sold? When the property's true owner decided to list it for sale, what would Gina do? I imagined her face and laughed. Then, however, my thoughts became more somber. Why not? Why don't I sell the house and start living my own life, free from daily humiliation, without having to pay for the privilege of owning a home and without being constantly criticized? It's what Vivian would call petty retaliation. Such things had never concerned her. You're becoming like them, Earl, she would have remarked. Perhaps she would comprehend this time. Given Gina's treatment of me, perhaps she would support my choice. I recalled how in 1968, Vivian and I had first met at a dance at the neighborhood club. I was 20 years old. She was 19. Tall, with brown hair and a giggle that made everyone smile, she was the most beautiful girl in the room. After a year of marriage, we purchased a modest home outside of Slidell. I was an electrician. She works as a teacher. Despite our meager salary, we were content. Everything changed after the birth of the first child, Gina, and then Weston. They were never grateful for what they had. More was always what they desired. Weston insisted on pricey toys. Gina insisted on wearing elegant attire. Even though Vivian and I put forth extra effort to make sure they got what they required, it was never sufficient. Additionally, they were too preoccupied with their own lives to make the effort to regularly visit Vivian in the hospital when she became ill. With a sigh, I returned to the present. I reached a little park at the end of the street after the walk. I took a seat on a bench and observed the ducks in the pond. How would Vivian describe my life right now? Would my lies be accepted by her? Most likely not. Directness has always been Vivian's preference. She would undoubtedly say, "Earl, tell them the truth. Get out of hiding." However, the truth came too late. Too many years had gone by. There were too many lies. They would never forgive me for my dishonesty if I came clean now. The idea of further family strife was difficult, even though I didn't especially appreciate their forgiveness. Gina was in a nasty mood when I arrived home for dinner. She thrashed about the kitchen, loudly banging cabinet doors. "What's the matter?" Gently, I asked her. She said the boiler broke. Once more. For the third time this year. This house simply wastes money. Sitting at the table, I observed her stumbling. Perhaps I ought to hire a different handyman. The last person to arrive didn't give me confidence. Gina turned abruptly to face me. "Are you now an authority on boilers?" There was cynicism in her voice. "Or perhaps you have extra cash for a new handyman." I didn't respond, because I knew it would simply stoke the flames. "Exactly," she added. "You sit here and provide criticism, And who will foot the bill? As usual, Noah and I. How much does it cost to operate this house? Are you aware of the amount we pay on taxes, insurance, and repairs? Yes. I wanted to say that I do. For 20 years, I have been paying for it. I simply nodded. Instead, I am aware that it is costly. Gina, who was sitting across from me, folded her arms across her chest and said, "You don't understand anything. All you need to do is pay your portion on time. You already have all the amenities and you live here. However, even that is problematic." I protested, feeling my rage building. "I always pay on time." "Yes," she said, "but that's not good enough. Earl, prices are rising. Your life can no longer be subsidized by us. Provide subsidies." It was my chance to speak up now. "I pay $400 for utilities and $2,000 for a room. That exceeds my pension. What do you suppose the source of the remaining funds is?" Gina nearly screamed. "Is it something that falls from the sky?" "No. Noah and I are working extremely hard to pay for this house." I inhaled deeply in an attempt to relax. This discussion was just leading to further arguments. Finally, I stated that I could either find another place to live or raise my share if necessary. Gina gave a snort. "Where are you going?" "A 77-year-old man with a small pension. Who would rent to him? You understand that we adopted you because you are our father, not because of the money. You can't sit on our necks because of it." Inhaled. The words sliced through like a blade. I felt like a stray puppy that had been taken in out of sympathy each time Gina said them. Just then, Noah came into the kitchen after going for a run. He could feel the strain right away. "What's happening?" Gina responded, "The boiler is broken, and Earl believes we should hire more costly handymen." "That's not what I said," I retorted. "All I was doing was suggesting." Noah cut in, "What you suggested doesn't matter. The truth is that your contribution is the same, but the cost of operating this place is increasing. We're not treated fairly." Feeling like I was being pushed into a corner, I responded, "I just told Gina I'm willing to increase my share." "By how much?" Noah asked in a professional manner. "The increase in expenses would be covered by an additional $500 per month." I took a swallow. 500 more. With my pension, that would be practically impossible. They were unaware that I had money in my account, of course. I finally answered, "Yeah, I need to think about it. This advancement is significant." Noah interrupted me. "So think quickly. Bills aren't going to wait." Gina and I were left alone in the kitchen after he departed. I couldn't quite place the emotion on her face, but it was a mix of disappointment, annoyance, and perhaps a hint of sympathy. She said, "You understand that we won't throw you out on the street. However, you must pay your fair part. Dad, this is adulthood. Nothing is free. Adulthood." She is telling me about adult life. I am 77 years old, have worked my entire life, buried my wife, and have reared 2 children. "I know," I said, suppressing my rage. "I will consider your offer." I noticed the realtor outside the Browns' house the following day while taking my regular stroll. On the yard, a tall man, wearing a pricey suit, was posting a for sale sign. I went up to him, not knowing why. "Hello," I said. "Is the Browns' house up for sale?" The man smiled at me professionally as he turned around. "Yes, Slidell Luxury Real Estate's Raymond Prescott. He gave a business card to me. Would you like to purchase?" I smiled. "No, I was just wondering." I indicated my home, saying, "I live in the neighborhood. There." Raymond let out a whistle. "It's a fantastic home, among the nicest in the area. Don't hesitate to contact me if you ever wish to sell. In the current market, you can get a wonderful deal on a house like that." "Really?" I pretended to be shocked. "What do you believe its potential value might be?" Raymond narrowed his eyes and took a distant look at the mansion. Without doing an inspection, it's difficult to say for sure, but considering the size, location, and state of the market, I'd estimate at least $850,000. And if everything is in good shape, perhaps even $900,000. I pretended to be shocked and whistled. Whoa, is it wise to sell now? It's the best time in years, Raymond declared with assurance. There is a lot of demand. There are few offers. In a couple of days, homes in this neighborhood are selling, frequently for more than their asking price. If you're interested. No, I said quickly. I don't own the house. My daughter and I simply reside there. The owner is her. Raymond nodded. I see. Here's my card, though, in case your daughter ever considers selling. I can set up a free evaluation. I thanked him and put the card in my pocket. I pondered the discussion with the realtor for the remainder of the day. $850,000, possibly $900,000, was a significant increase over what I had paid 20 years prior. The kind of money that would allow me to live comfortably for the rest of my life, without having to justify every expense to Gina and Noah. After everyone had gone to bed that night, I took out Raymond's business card and looked at it for a while. Then, just to be sure I had an option, I pulled out my cell phone and saved the number, telling myself to be safe. The days that followed were rather calm. Avery was mostly at work or college, Gina was occupied at work, and Noah was away on a business trip. I relished the infrequent times when I was by myself, reading, playing with my antique radio, and listening to jazz. However, the storm struck once more on Thursday night. Gina was in a bad mood when she got home from work. She came in and tossed her bag on the table as I was reading the paper and sipping tea in the kitchen. "Have you sent the rent?" Without saying hello, she inquired. Keeping my eyes on the paper, I answered, "Yes, back on Monday." "What about the extra?" I raised my head. "What more?" We discussed raising your share. Then Gina crossed her arms across her chest. An additional $500 per month. "You promised to give it some thought." Calmly, I said, "I did. I've determined that the raise is beyond my means. Rubber isn't exactly what my pension is." Gina's cheeks flushed. "So you think we'll continue to pay your bills?" "Earl, that's unfair." I protested, feeling my blood pressure rise. "I'm paying a fair price for a room. For a little bedroom, $2,000 is more than the going rate." Gina's voice rose. "It's not just the room. The living room, the kitchen, and the garden are all being used by you. You use gas, electricity, and water. Even though I hardly use the utilities, I pay for them separately, and the amounts keep rising." Gina argued that you consume more than you realize, and that the cost of the real estate itself is rising even if you weren't. Both taxes and insurance rates increase. All of this must be paid for by someone. In an attempt to remain composed, I inhaled deeply. Although I am aware that house maintenance is costly, I am unable to spend more than I currently do. Perhaps you ought to speak with Weston if you require additional funds. He might be able to. Weston? Gina gave a sour chuckle. Are you serious? He has his own issues, and in contrast to you, he has actual costs, such as the mortgage, the business, and the children. I also have expenses, I muttered. Gina interrupted me to discuss drugs and doctors, which are primarily paid by health insurance. Earl, don't pretend to be poor. You should have savings, as we both know. You have lived a humble life and worked all your life. What happened to all the money? I kept quiet since I was at a loss for words. Do I have to be honest? Let me have millions in my account, will you? Or keep up the deception I'd been telling for 20 years? At last, I added, I used the majority of my savings to pay for your mother's medical care. It was just partially true. The cost of Vivian's care had been high, but it hadn't depleted my savings. The remainder was used for regular expenses. Gina, life is costly, particularly when you're elderly and ill. Gina gave me an incredulous look. To put it frankly, I don't believe you. Something is being concealed by you. I always have. But what do you know? I no longer have that difficulty. She hovered above me, getting closer. Dad, let me tell you something. You either find another place to live or you raise your portion by $500 each month. I refuse to continue supporting your life at the price of my family's welfare. I gazed at my youngest daughter, whom I had once held in my arms, to whom I read bedtime stories, and to whom I had purchased ice cream on Sundays in the park. She was icy and cunning now, standing in front of me like a stranger. Are you dismissing me? Quietly, I asked. I'm establishing fair terms, she said. Earl, this is business. Nothing is personal, nothing private. Evicting her own father is not personal, according to my own daughter. I understand, I said, rising from the table. Give me a week to make up my mind. Gina interrupted me, saying there was nothing to decide. Either pay the rent or leave. Her remarks were razor-sharp and hovered in the air. Silently, I left the kitchen and entered my room. I pulled Raymond Prescott's business card from my pocket and gazed at it for a while after I shut the door. My cell phone came out, and I dialed the number. Prescott, Mr. Earl Cunningham is this person. The other day, we had a conversation outside the Brown residence. That's correct indeed. I want to discuss the possibilities of selling my house with you. In the week I had given myself, I didn't wait. After my altercation with Gina, I began packing the very next morning. Clothes, a few books, an old radio, Vivian's photos, and private documents were all that was present. A depressing summary of my 77 years on this planet. My entire existence was contained in 2 bags in a cardboard box. When I finished packing, Gina was at work. Avery entered my room, paused in the doorway upon seeing the baggage. Grandfather, what's happening? She trembled when she spoke. The only person in this house who genuinely cared about me, my granddaughter, caught my attention. I tried to sound cool as I answered, Honey, I'm moving out. Yesterday, your mother gave me a deadline. I'll either raise the rent or move out. Since I'm unable to pay more, the decision is clear. Avery approached and took a seat beside me on the bed. This isn't right, she said. You can't be harmed by her. Her father is you. I grasped her hand. Sweetheart, it didn't matter in some homes. Blood ties were less essential than money. Where are you heading? Her eyes were filled with tears. I replied, I found a small apartment downtown. It's small but sufficient for me. I won't remain on the streets, so don't worry. Actually, I had already cleaned the place. As if waiting for my argument with Gina to conclude, I had called the real estate company a week prior. The apartment was compact, located in an ancient home close to Slidell's downtown, yet it was spotless and completely equipped. The monthly rent of $2,200 was far lower than what I was paying Gina for a room in my own home. Avery gave me a tight hug and said, I'll come visit you. I grinned and said, I'll be waiting. I gave you the address, but don't tell your mom. As she requested, let her believe that I had vanished from her life. Avery nodded, but it was clear to me that she was struggling with our relationship. She was too young to be caught between devotion to her mother and affection for her grandfather. At midday, the cab pulled up. I pretended to be an elderly guy in need of my daughter's favor as I took one more look around the room I had occupied for the previous 5 years. I was aware of the situation's irony. I was leaving my own house after being evicted by a woman who was unaware that she was residing there. Avery offered me a heartfelt farewell hug and assisted me in carrying my belongings to my car. She said, "I'll give you a call tomorrow." I said, "I'll be waiting," and climbed into the taxi. I turned to face the house as we drove off. Money that had come to me like manna from heaven 20 years ago was used to purchase a large, exquisite home. Soon, I would no longer own that house. The place was just what I had anticipated. Average housing for a low-income single retiree. A tiny bathroom where you can hardly move about. A tiny living area that doubles as the kitchen. And a tiny bedroom. It's all ancient, but it's clean and works. I arranged my belongings, placed Vivian's photo on the nightstand, and took a seat in the shabby armchair near the window. A weird sensation came over me. Sadness, relief, and resolve all mixed together. The way my daughter's life had ended out grieved me. But I was also relieved that I was no longer forced to pretend and put up with humiliation every day. I was also committed to carrying out the strategy that had developed in my mind. I met Raymond Prescott at a cafe close to my new flat the following day. When I called, he seemed taken aback. I was even more shocked when I informed him that I, not my daughter, owned the house. He soon regained his professional poise, though. He held out his hand to me and said, "I'm happy you chose to hire me, Mr. Cunningham. Your home is a true gem in the Slidell real estate market, I must say." I sipped my coffee and nodded. I answered, "I want to sell it quickly and quietly. One small detail is involved. The house is occupied by my daughter and her family, who are unaware that I own it." Raymond's eyebrows went up, but he made no inquiries. "I get it. Family situations can be challenging. However, that isn't an issue. We are able to manage any transaction in confidence. The buyers must, however, view the house." Yes, I did interrupt. "You might inform your daughter that the house's present owner has made the decision to sell it, and that after the sale is completed, she will have a normal eviction term. She doesn't have to be aware that I am the owner." With contemplation, Raymond drummed his fingers on the table. "It is feasible. To conceal your identity, we could sell the property through a limited liability business or a trust. But tell me, are you certain you want to choose that path? Family secrets often surface at the most inconvenient times." I laughed. For 20 years, this specific secret has been kept under wraps. A few more months won't change anything. Whatever you say. Raymond gave a nod. "Let's talk about the cost. Following an initial market research and appraisal, I think we can list your home for $890,000. Considering the present demand, that is a reasonable yet aggressive price." I gave a nod. "That makes sense. However, I would like to establish $840,000 as the lowest reasonable price. I'll agree to sell right away if an offer of that sum or more is made." Raymond grinned. "Mr. Cunningham, you are an expert in real estate. An appropriate barrier is $840,000. This provides us with a clear aim, but I'm rather certain we'll receive bigger offers." We talked about the specifics, including the marketing plan, showing schedule, and agency commission. Raymond did his job professionally and gave concise, straightforward explanations of everything. I felt like I was in capable hands by the end of the meeting. Raymond remarked, "By the end of the week, I'll have the documents ready. I'll take photos and create a virtual tour in the meanwhile. When would be a good time to show me the house's interior?" I mentioned that my daughter works weekdays from 9 to 5. The greatest time would be then. The key will be given to you. We parted after Raymond nodded. I returned to my tiny flat with an odd sense of relief. The wheel had swung around. My revenge plan will soon come to pass. Gina called in the evening. I stared at the glowing phone screen for a moment before responding. I wanted to live my entire life ignoring her calls, but I knew that would only postpone the inevitable. In addition, I wanted to hear her opinion. "Hi," I responded at last. "Where are you, Earl?" She seemed irritated, yet there was a hint of worry in her voice. I gave an evasive response. "Somewhere safe." "You left without even said farewell. Did you?" "You're gone when I get home. Your belongings are gone." "You departed in a cab," Avery replied. "Gina, what were you expecting? I was practically ejected from the house by you. You weren't ejected by me. You weren't ejected by me. You should pay your fair share, as I just stated." I reminded her that I couldn't afford it, which is equivalent to being evicted. On the line, there was stillness. Then Gina let out a sigh. "Look, I may have been too severe. We can discuss this. At your age, you shouldn't be living alone. It's risky." "Oh," I thought, "the dog is over there." I wasn't a concern for Gina. Money was her concern. The family's budget would be substantially cut if I didn't pay my rent. I answered, "I'm doing just fine on my own. I was able to afford a little flat." "Now, there is nothing to be concerned about." "But your belongings," she started. I interrupted, taking whatever I needed. "The remainder is yours to keep or discard as you see fit." "You're being crazy, Earl," she said. Her voice carried a familiar sense of superiority. "You're 77. Living alone is not an option." "Of course I can," I said. "I'm doing it too. Gina, don't worry. You and Noah won't have to put up with me." She said, "That's not the point. We are a family. We must remain united." Family. When she realized she was losing her source of income, she conveniently remembered that. "I apologize, Gina. But when you gave me the ultimatum, you broke that illusion yourself," I observed coolly. "I've made my choice, and I respect yours. It's best for us all, in my opinion." She made an effort to persuade me to stay a little while longer, but I refused. She gave up at last. "Okay, do as you please. However, don't come to me in tears when you're having trouble living alone. Do not be concerned," I said. "I won't," and hung up. The following few days were spent getting used to my new place. I looked up the closest pharmacy, bought groceries, and looked over the bus timetable. The course of life started to change. I was able to breathe better without the daily arguments with Gina, the need to track every dollar spent, and the ongoing sense that you are a burden to your own kids. Even though things were simple, I felt more liberated than I had in a long time. As promised, Avery called on the second day. She came that evening with a new book and some homemade cookies after I gave her the address. "How is your adjustment going?" Glancing around the apartment, she asked. "Very comfortable," I said as I poured tea. "It's silent. Most of the neighbors are elderly, much like me. I even take morning walks in the adjoining little park." With her chin resting in her palms, Avery took a seat at the tiny kitchen table. "Mom is mad," she said. "She initially believed you were bluffing and would return shortly. She's mad with you now that she knows you're serious." I smiled. I can picture. What was Noah's response? Avery rolled her eyes. "He's worried about money. Without your part. He's still figuring out how much he'll have to pay for the house. It's not the other way around. They're both acting as though you betrayed them." I shook my head without saying anything. By forcing my granddaughter to take sides in the dispute, I didn't want to put her in an even more challenging situation. "How about Weston? Is he aware that I moved out?" "Yes, my mother gave him a call." Avery took a drink of her tea. "Typical Earl," he continued, always thinking of himself. "Grandpa, I'm sorry, but my uncle is a jerk." For the first time in a very long time, I laughed honestly and openly. "Honey, don't apologize. As they say, it's a rough family." We spent about 2 hours conversing. Avery informed me about her goals for the future, her part-time work at the coffee shop, and college. She aspired to work as a journalist covering social issues. She was intelligent and had high dreams. I hoped that she would be able to fulfill those ambitions with the money she would eventually receive from me. I experienced loneliness once more after she went, although it wasn't as bad as it had been. It was now the serene solitude of a man who can at last breathe completely. Raymond Prescott called with the news 3 days later. He exclaimed, "We already have interested buyers, Mr. Cunningham. I submitted the advertisement this morning after taking pictures and creating a virtual tour yesterday, and I've already received 5 viewing requests." That quickly? I was taken aback. Raymond answered, "I told you the market is hot right now. In addition, your home is a true treasure. Excellently maintained 3-story home in a posh area. These deals are not often available." We decided on a timetable for the showing. When Gina wasn't at work, Raymond would bring prospective purchasers. I cautioned him and handed him another set of keys. "Don't leave any traces of your presence. Lock every door just as it was. The realtor, Mr. Cunningham, told me not to worry. I work as a professional. Your daughter won't have any suspicions until the final second." Gina called again the following day. She spoke in a gentler, almost contrite tone this time. "I've been considering our predicament, Earl," she started. "We might be able to reach an agreement. Instead of paying the entire $500, you might pay $250. I said in a neutral tone, "That's an interesting suggestion." "What's altered?" With haste, she responded, "Nothing has changed. You're my father, that's all. I don't want you to live in a cheap apartment by yourself. It's not secure." I held back a laugh. Lying had never come naturally to Gina. Their budget was clearly collapsing in the absence of my rent. I answered, "I'm already settled in, but thank you for your care." I made a deposit and signed a 6-month lease. It's quiet, too. I have no one to tell me when to turn on the heat or how much electricity I can use. "Be reasonable, Earl," she said, her tone somewhat irritated. "You cannot live by yourself. What happens if you get sick at night or fall?" I answered, "I have a phone for emergencies. Furthermore, I'm not as infirm as you may believe." "I'll be fine," she sighed. "You've been obstinate all along. You were impossible to argue with, according to Mom." I pricked at the name of Vivian. As though attempting to forget her mother, Gina hardly ever discussed her. I remarked softly that Vivian knew when to push and when to back off. "I wish you had inherited that quality." That was the end of the talk. Gina hung up after mumbling something about calling back later. I had faith that she would keep trying to win me back. It was for the money, not because she cared. The week flew by. Every day, Raymond would call with updates on showings and possible purchases. The house drew a lot of interest. In the first 3 days, it had been seen by 12 families, and half of them said they meant business. Raymond called with the good news on the 7th day, following the start of the showings. "Now, Mr. Cunningham, we have an idea." There was excitement in his voice. $860,000 in cash. The deal was closed quickly. The buyers are an older couple from New York who recently retired. They adored the house, particularly the pond view. My heart began to beat a little quicker. It was more than I had anticipated. $86,000. I would have roughly $750,000 net after taxes and the agency commission. That, along with the money I already had saved, was more than plenty to guarantee a comfortable old age. Without hesitation, I answered, "I accept the offer." "Good," Raymond said. "I'll get the paperwork ready and get in touch with their realtor. If all goes according to plan, we can finalize the deal in 2 weeks." I said, "What about my daughter? When will the sale be announced to her?" After the purchase closes, the new owners often offer the renters 30 days to vacate, according to Raymond. However, in this instance, we may let your daughter know as soon as the preliminary contract is completed because the buyers are eager to relocate. She will have more time to look for a new residence as a result. I said, "Do that. She should know as quickly as possible." I sat in a window-facing chair after the call, contemplating my choice while gazing out at the street. A part of me was dissatisfied and resentful. My life didn't end the way I had imagined. I had dreamed of spending my last years with a loving family, maybe with grandchildren coming to see me every weekend, and a daughter who took care of me because she loved me, not because she had money. Rather, I was retaliating against a woman who only considered me as a source of money by selling my house. However, I also experienced a peculiar sense of fulfillment. At last, Gina would understand that she had been living in my home for years, not the other way around, that I wasn't a defenseless old man who needed her favor, and that I could have pulled a fast one at any time, which is exactly what I was doing right now. Such retaliation is unlikely to have been acceptable to Vivian. Anger destroys the soul of the one who feels it, not the one at whom it is directed, she used to say. However, Vivian didn't witness the transformation of our daughter after her passing, didn't hear the icy remarks, didn't feel the contemptuous glances, and hadn't had to put up with the humiliation year after year, day after day. Gazing at my wife's photo on the bedside table, I let out a sigh. I muttered, "I'm sorry, sweetheart." However, even the most patient people have their breakdowns. The days that followed were filled with paperwork. I provided bank statements, signed paperwork, and responded to inquiries from attorneys. Raymond expertly managed the procedure, outlining each stage and alerting the reader to any potential dangers. Still attempting to persuade me to return, Gina called me multiple times. I didn't want to give her false optimism, but I also didn't want to give away my plans, so I answered evasively. Like any other tenant, let her ask the realtor everything. It would be just. Raymond called with the news 10 days after I had departed. "The preliminary deal has been signed, Mr. Cunningham. The purchasers have made a $86,000 down payment. We can now formally inform your daughter about the sale. How are you going to accomplish that?" I inquired. Sending her a registered letter informing her of the sale and requesting that she leave the property within 30 days of the closing is typical procedure. However, I believe a face-to-face encounter will work better for you. Tomorrow, I can come over and go over everything. I told her she would be angry. "Don't worry," smiled Raymond. "In my 15 years in this industry, I have witnessed everything. In real estate transactions, tenant ire is a frequent occurrence. I accepted his proposal, but requested that he keep my involvement a secret until the very end. Although Raymond pledged to keep information private, he cautioned that my name would unavoidably be on the paperwork at the end of the transaction. "Your daughter will see that you are the seller if she closely examines the deeds," he stated. "I can't conceal that." "I get it," I said. "By then it won't matter. What matters is that she is currently unaware." I had a hard time sleeping that night because I kept thinking about Raymond telling Gina the news. When she realized she could no longer live in that house, her expression changed. How she panics and calls Noah to inform him that they are being evicted. These thoughts filled me with a sense of satisfaction, yet I also experienced a peculiar emptiness. Was I truly looking for this? Even if my own daughter deserved it, would I still exact revenge on her? I headed to the window after getting out of bed. Ignorant of the minor human dramas taking place behind closed doors, Night Slidell was glistening with lights and going about its daily business. Gina was resting somewhere in a large house on a peaceful street, not realizing that her life would alter the next day. And it was me, her father, who activated the mechanism. I told myself, "You're doing the right thing." When she decided that money was more important than family, she made the same decision. But deep within, a voice like Vivian's murmured, "Earl, are there winners in family wars? Or just losers?" I had no idea what the response was. I was aware that Gina would call shortly. She was scheduled to meet with Raymond Prescott this morning to inform her of the house sale. I tried to read the detective while I was sitting in my tiny flat, but the words were hazy. My mind kept going back to what was going on in my old house. What would Gina think? How would she respond? Would she cry, shout, or do Noah's icy analysis of the situation? At precisely 11:30, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. She was the one. I inhaled deeply, collected my thoughts, and responded. "Hi there. What on earth is happening here?" Anger was ringing in Gina's voice. "Just get right to the topic, no greeting. What are you discussing?" I made the decision to not ease her burden. There was a realtor present. She was virtually yelling. "He informs us that the house has been sold and that we must vacate within 30 days of the closure. Is there an error of some sort? There's a problem with the rent. It's this, the occasion for which I have spent the last 2 weeks getting ready, the point at when the truth is revealed." "Gina, no. No error exists." Calmly, I answered. "Yes, the house has been sold. However, how is that even possible?" Her voice faltered. "You've been making on-time rent payments. I personally looked over the bills. How can we be evicted by the landlord?" I remarked that the landlord is free to sell his property or do anything else he wants with it. Then, Gina emphasized, we must call him right away. Describe the circumstances. Make a bid to purchase the house ourselves. My credit history is solid, as is Noah's. We could... Gina, I cut her off. You're not understanding. The landlord has already decided what to do. The sale price of the house is $840,000. The payment has been made. The paperwork is signed. However, this is absurd. We have been residing here for more than 5 years. We ought to have some rights. Her voice was so desperate that I could hear it. Earl, you must assist us in solving this. I take it you had the landlord's number? Did you pay him directly? I shut my eyes. It's this. The truth moment. Gina, no. No master was paid by me. I gave you money. What are you discussing? Clearly, she didn't get it. Naturally, I paid the landlord and you paid me. It was more practical. No, I said slowly, clearly pronouncing each word. Since there was no landlord, you didn't have to pay one. I had always owned the house. On the line was silence. Gina's expression changed from one of incomprehension to one of shock, as I could practically see her attempting to understand what I was saying. What? What were you saying? At last, she managed to squeeze out. I emphasized that I was the owner of the residence. I used lottery money to purchase it 20 years ago, following the death of your mother. I never had a lease. That was untrue. No. She lowered her voice to a whisper. It isn't feasible. You couldn't. You constantly claimed to be barely making ends meet while renting this place. I said a falsehood. I attested. Because I knew you and Weston wouldn't give me $1 if I told the truth about the house and the winds. That was how you were all the time. Pleading and begging and begging. Money for your wedding, your first car, and college. You always wanted more and never showed gratitude. This is ridiculous, I must say. Gina seemed unable to comprehend what was being played. You claim that you deceived us for 20 years, leading us to believe that we were assisting you when in fact we were not. I completed for her even though you were actually residing in my home and charging me for the privilege. Yes, exactly. You've sold the house now. Her tone abruptly turned nasty. Is your own daughter being abandoned by you? I made a correction. I sold my property, the exact property for which you were requesting payment. You even threatened to evict me from the property if I didn't raise the rent. Do not forget what you said. Either pay the rent or leave. Yes, I did. You need to clean up now. Gina sighed. You are a monster. How could you harm your own family in this way, to your own daughter? When Avery learns that her grandfather threw us out on the street, what will she say? I shot back. I don't throw people out on the street. You have 30 days to find a new residence. That shouldn't be a problem, given your income. And don't involve Avery in this. The only member of your family who has ever shown me respect is her. Gina screamed. When she learns the truth, she'll hate you. All of us will. Noah, Weston, and the entire family. Earl, you'll be by yourself, alone. I should have been offended by what she said, but yet I just felt exhausted, weary of the deceit, the charade, and the poisonous connection that had persisted for years. I muttered, Gina, I'm already alone. Since your mother passed away, I've been by myself. Other than when you needed money, you and Weston have never been present. Your threats are therefore around 20 years too late. I could hear Gina crying on the other end of the call. Her voice was filled with genuine emotion, not fake indignation, for the first time in the entire talk. It's not fair, she remarked, her voice faltering. You're not allowed to say that. You were taken care of by us. I cut you off. You handled my money. Gina, you have no idea what drugs I'm taking. You have no idea what music I enjoy or what literature I read. You only cared about my wealth, not my life. She was furious. That is untrue. I added that I made myself feel like a burden for every service I performed, including cooking your meals, washing your clothing, and taking you to the doctor. Every chance she had, she reminded me of how difficult it was for you to be with me, keeping track of my water and electricity consumption. It's business, Gina. That's not caring. Her voice grew softer. I can't believe you feel that way about us. Following everything we've done for you. And I'm amazed that you're unable to see the truth, I answered. However, it is no longer relevant. The house has been sold. You have 30 days to find a new residence. I advise you to begin searching right now. Gina stated in a menacing tone, You're going to regret this. I'll let everyone know what you did, including your neighbors and family. Everyone will be aware of your true nature. I shrugged, but she couldn't see me telling them. I have nothing more to conceal. I put the phone down on the table and hit the end button. I could feel my hands shaking a little. Even though I appeared composed, I found the talk difficult. I experienced an odd spectrum of feelings. The revelation of the truth was a relief. I was saddened by the eventual destruction of my relationship with my daughter, and the void that follows a bitter but long-awaited victory. I got to my feet and went to the window. It was a sunny, clear day. Unaware of the minor family drama taking place in one of the flats, people were going about their daily lives down the street. Regardless of our issues, life continued on as usual. 15 minutes later, the phone rang once more. Weston was the one this time. I nearly anticipated it. Naturally, Gina had immediately called her brother and told him everything. I inhaled deeply before responding. "What the hell are you doing, Weston?" The anger in my son's voice was evident. "I just got a hysterical call from Gina." "Did you sell the house? Really? Are you abandoning your own children to the streets?" Calmly, I answered, "I sold my property. I had every right to sell it. However, why now? Why so abruptly?" Clearly, Weston was unable to comprehend my intentions. Furthermore, why in the world didn't you inform us that you were the home's owner? I gave a direct response so you would start requesting your share right away. As usual, you and Gina would always reach out as soon as I had money. Do you recall asking me to lend you money for your company? Every time we spoke, you always finished the call by requesting money. It's unfair. Weston was furious. I thought you wanted me to be successful, so I sought for help. Because darn it, you're my dad. I reminded him that I had also been helpful, a lot of times. However, that was never sufficient, was it? More was always required. And where is the appreciation? Where is the deference? You only gave me a call when you were in need of cash. Last year, you didn't even come to see me on my birthday. I had a crucial meeting, Weston said in defense. I was unable to cancel. You couldn't, of course, I said with a weary sigh. An elderly father is never more significant than anything else. However, there's always time to contact when you need money. It's unbelievable that you have such strong feelings about us. The bitterness in Weston's voice was audible to me. Dad, we're your family. We looked after you. I shook my head. Weston, you looked after my finances, as well as what I might provide you, not me. And that's the reason you chose to exact revenge, displace Gina and her family from their home. Is that how you're trying to teach us? And I calmly reiterated, I'm not putting anyone out on the street. They have 30 days to locate a new residence. It shouldn't be an issue given their money. 30 days is nothing, said Weston. Are you aware of how difficult it is to locate a decent home in Slidell these days? The cost has soared. I know, I answered. For that reason, I sold The price of $840,000 seemed reasonable. Weston was quiet for a while as he processed the information. His voice altered to $840,000. With that money, what will you do? That's all. Weston's tone instantly shifted from anger to intrigue at the announcement of the huge cash. Normal. I said, it's none of your business. My business is my money. But, he protested, it's the family home. What you're doing would never be acceptable to Mom. I was pricked by the name of Vivian, but I refused to be duped. I answered sharply, don't bring your mother into this. The way you two have treated me throughout the years is also something she would never approve of. She would be disappointed to see how avaricious her kids had become. Dad, that's low. Weston's voice became icy. Mom is being used against us. I parried, no less than playing with her memory. It was obvious that the discourse was stalling. I refused to back down from Weston's accusations of betrayal. He finally gave up. What do you know? Do as you please, but don't return to us when you're ill and alone. I cleaned our hands of it, as did Gina. I whispered. You did this a long time ago. A long time ago. I hung up the phone and slumped in my chair. I was more worn out from these chats than I had anticipated. Not in a physical sense, on an emotional level. It was both freeing and painful to finally say aloud what I had been suppressing for years. Avery's next call came next. She sounded concerned. Grandfather, what's happening? Mom just called me crazy, alleging that you are throwing them out on the street after selling the house. Is that accurate? I let out a sigh. Alas, Avery, being forced to mediate a family dispute. I answered honestly, in part. Although I did sell the house, I'm not throwing anyone out. They have 30 days to locate a new residence. But I don't get it, Grandpa. She sounded perplexed. How could the house be sold? Didn't it belong to Mom and Dad? No, I answered quietly. Honey, I have always owned the house. I never mentioned it to anyone, even though I purchased it 20 years ago. Avery was presumably trying to take in this knowledge during the gap. That's what you've been telling me all along. She started. Your folks have been residing in my home all this time. The opposite is not true. I attested, and were collecting rent from me. Isn't that ironic? However, why did you never discuss it? Her confusion was audible in her voice. What made me conceal it? I explained that your parents and Uncle Weston would demand their part once the truth was out. Avery, I won the lotto. A large one. I used the funds to purchase a home and deposited the remaining amount into an account. A year later, there would be no sign of the money if they discovered it. She said you didn't trust them. I corrected them. I knew them too well, and I was correct in time. Observe their reaction when I declined to raise the rent. I was practically evicted from my own home by your mother. Avery remained quiet for some time while she processed the facts. At last, Mom remarked, "You did it out of retaliation." I wondered that you intended to punish them. Was it retaliation? Partially, yes. I couldn't deny that picturing Gina's astonishment gave me a sense of gratification. That wasn't all, though. To be honest, I did it because I was exhausted. I'm sick of faking, lying, and having to defend every purchase I make. Avery, I wanted freedom. To have the freedom to spend my money however I pleased, without worrying about someone grabbing on and requesting their fair share. I get it, she muttered. Grandfather, it's still cruel. Now they have nowhere to live. I argued that they had the funds to purchase a new home or rent one. They have 30 days and are not homeless. There's plenty of time to find housing. I think you're right, Avery groaned. Simply said, this is all really surprising. I am unsure about my thoughts. I whispered, you don't have to pick sides, my love. Regardless of what you choose, I will always adore you. Grandpa, I know. Her voice faltered. I only fear that I will no longer be able to see you. Mom claims she will never forgive you because she is so angry. I told her it was her decision. However, you are welcome to come see me at any time. You can always come to me. I felt exhausted after speaking with Avery. It seemed as though all of the feelings I had been suppressing for years had suddenly exploded, leaving behind a charred desert. There was no victory, no sense of vengeance, just exhaustion and the odd sense of relief that comes from no longer needing to pretend. I shut off my phone since I didn't want to talk to anyone else. Enough for today. Though I didn't think it would happen, perhaps the passions might subside a little by tomorrow. I took a quick stroll outside in the evening. The air smelled of budding trees, and the temperature was pleasant. As I walked slowly, I reflected on the day's events, the surprise in Gina's voice, Weston's rage, Avery's perplexity. and how a single choice taken 20 years ago to conceal the profits and purchase the property had resulted in the present. Did I make a mistake? It's difficult to say. Perhaps things might have gone differently if I'd told my children the truth right away. Perhaps if they had known about my finances, they would have treated me with more deference and consideration, or more likely, they would have just spent my savings more quickly. I thought about Vivian, her insight, her capacity to see right through others. She had always maintained that, like termites destroying a tree, secrets systematically erode families from the inside out. Was she correct? Had my falsehoods wrecked my family? Or had my children's selfishness and greed already wrecked it? I had no idea what the response was. I didn't think I'd ever find out. I was certain, though, that I no longer wanted to live a lie. Regardless of what transpired next or how this story turned out, I would face him with an open mind and a clear conscience. I switched on my phone once I was back in the apartment. Gina missed 10 calls, Weston missed 5, and Avery missed 2. I didn't bother to read some of the messages. I placed the phone on the nightstand and turned the volume down. Tomorrow, I would take care of everything tomorrow, this evening. All I needed was some quiet. I watched the sun set over Slidell from a chair by the window. I experienced an odd feeling of liberation, as though the burden I had been bearing for 2 decades had finally been lifted. I had indeed harmed my kids. Yes, I doubt they would ever forgive me. However, I was no longer a victim of their machinations or a prisoner of my own lies. I felt real for the first time in a long time. Not a stingy father who wouldn't support his kid, not a destitute old man who was dependent on his daughter's kindness, but just a man. 77-year-old widower Earl Cunningham was entitled to run his life and finances however he saw proper. It was not a victory. All it was a release. It's been 3 weeks since Gina discovered the truth about the house. My life had undergone significant transformation during that period. After all fees and taxes were paid, the deal was successfully finalized, and I was given a check for $735,000. The funds were transferred to my account, adding to the total of the profits I had so meticulously preserved over the years. My first action after becoming wealthy was to purchase a modest but comfortable home in Slidell's southern region, with 3 bedrooms, a large living area, and a porch that overlooked a well-manicured garden. It was a 1-story home. It was much more sensible for an elderly guy who was lonely, but it had cost $520,000, which was far less than what I had received for selling the old house. Wide doors, no stairs, a practical layout, all the makings of a happy home. When I paid for the house in full, mortgage-free, my enthusiastic realtor, Helen Morrow, who assisted me with the purchase, was taken aback. As we signed the documents, she said, "That's uncommon these days, Mr. Cunningham. Most purchasers obtain a loan." I smiled and said, "I'm too old for credit. I would rather fully and unconditionally own what I have." I began renovating the house once I purchased it. I was able to spend money for the first time in years without worrying about what Gina or Noah would think. I purchased modern, comfy, high-quality furniture that I chose based on my personal preferences rather than cost. I finally got my long-desired huge armchair with an adjustable backrest. I purchased a large-screen contemporary TV in order to watch vintage films that I cherished. For fear of coming out as wasteful, he reorganized his closet, discarding the tattered shirts and pants he had worn for years. The best part, though, was seeing a specialist that a neighbor had recommended, not the doctor Gina drove me to, who kept reminding me of the visit's expense. I had a thorough evaluation from seasoned gerontologist Dr. Phelps, who also recommended a physical therapist who helped me create an exercise regimen to increase my mobility and prescribed more potent drugs for my arthritis. Following the examination, Dr. Phelps remarked, "You're in excellent shape for someone your age, Mr. Cunningham. You can continue to lead an active life for many more years with the right care and attention." My soul felt soothed by those words. Gina had been telling me for years that I was deteriorating and need more and more care. I was relieved to learn that I wasn't as ill as she had said. Gina and Noah were searching frantically for a place to reside while I was getting used to my new surroundings. We spoke on the phone on a daily basis, and Avery told me about it. After the house scandal, as she referred to it, she was the only member of the family who continued to communicate with me. One evening, she told me, "They're looking at apartments, but everyone's not happy. Dad is upset about the rent price, while Mom claims that nothing compares to the former house. They are constantly fighting. Sincerely, I apologize that you had to see this." Avery sighed. "Not your fault, Grandpa. Technically speaking, it is, but I can see why you did it. It's likely that I would have grown weary of the incessant requests and pestering. Attempting to view a topic from multiple perspectives was extremely typical of Avery. She was 19 years old and wiser than her parents. I suspected the answer, but I asked how Uncle Weston looked at all of this. "He's angry," Avery said. "He accuses you of being self-centered and betraying the entire family." You know what's hilarious, though? In the midst of a scandal, he called and requested a loan to develop the firm as soon as Mom told him about your money. It didn't surprise me. That was always Weston. He would take advantage, even when he was upset. "How about your parents? Do they still feel angry with me?" After a little silence, Avery replied, "Mom is. She claims that because of your infidelity and expulsion from the house, she will never forgive you. He's more upset, Dad, about having to pay for a new location. For Dad, it's all about the money, you know." Yes, I did. Financial analysis has always been Noah's profession, not just his trade. He has viewed every choice he has made in life through the lens of profit and loss. Feeling a twinge of guilt, I inquired if they had discovered anything appropriate. "I believe so," Avery said. "An apartment close to the center in a new building. Although it's not as large as the house, it's still a respectable location." My mother was still unhappy, claiming that their lives had regressed. I remained silent. Status and the accoutrements of success had always been Gina's obsession. Her ego took a hit when she moved from a large home to an apartment, even a good one. "When will you be relocating to your new residence?" Avery brought up another topic. "I've already moved in," I said. "Yesterday I finished moving my belongings inside. You ought to stop by sometime. I believe you will enjoy it." "I will," she said. "Don't tell Mom, please. She won't let me see you." I told her that would be our secret. I had a cup of tea and enjoyed the nice evening after our talk on the new veranda. The way things had worked out was odd. I had been living a lie for years, posing as an elderly guy in need of my daughter's favor. I was free now that the truth was out. However, my connection with the majority of the family suffered as a result of that freedom. Was it worthwhile? It's difficult to say. At times, when I was weak, I questioned my choice. Perhaps continuing to play the game, enduring humiliation and nagging, was worthwhile in order to maintain at least the appearance of familial relationships. However, when Gina asked for a raise in rent, I recalled the icy, calculating in her gaze. Weston's greed, his incessant demands for more than I could provide, and his persistent sense that I was a burden and that my existence was only accepted due to the money I generated. I said no. The cost of freedom was worth it. It was worthwhile to end a relationship that had long since ceased to be healthy, because it allowed me to live by my own rules, spend my own money without justifications, and not have to worry about getting evicted from my own house. Avery came to see me a few days later as promised. When she saw my new house, her eyes grew big. "Grandpa, wow." Glancing around the large living room with its new furnishings and contemporary appliances, she exclaimed, "It's incredible. Much greater than I had anticipated." "What were you anticipating?" I smiled as I asked. "That a shack would be my home." "Obviously not," she chuckled. "Simply put, Mom mentioned that you most likely moved out to a cheap apartment on the outskirts. She is unaware that you own all of this." She walked about the room, taking in the new TV, the well-made furnishings, and the assortment of books that were all carefully placed on the shelves. I told her she didn't have to know. Allow her to think as she pleases. Together, we spent the afternoon. In order to teach Avery how to use the internet, I showed her the house, the garden, and the new computer I had purchased. Instead of the cheap spaghetti and thin sauce Gina provided me, we made a proper dinner together, using high-quality food I could now buy. As we sat on the porch after supper, Avery said, "You look happy, Grandpa." "I suppose more laid back." I said, "I am. I feel free for the first time in a long time. There is no need to justify your existence or prove anything to anyone. Sincerely, I'm glad for you," she said. "Yes, I am. You are worthy of happiness." I took her hand. "So do you, my love. I wanted to discuss something with you, by the way. For your schooling and future, I have opened a trust account in your name." "What?" She had a startled expression. "You don't have to, Grandpa." "I want to." I cut her off. "The only person in this family who truly cared about me was you. It's about me, not my money. You should have the opportunity to receive a quality education and live the life you choose without worrying about finances." Tears came to Avery's eyes. "I'm at a loss for words," she said. "Thank you. What will Dad and Mom say, though? How could they know?" I gave her a wink. "It's just the two of us. After you graduate from college, you will be able to handle the finances. It will simply accumulate in an account till then." Like I did as a child, Avery gave me a firm hug. "Despite all of your lies and secrets," she added, "you are the greatest grandfather in the world." A warm feeling filled my heart as I laughed. In my family, at least one relationship stayed intact. The unexpected occurred a month after Gina and Noah had moved into their new apartment. It was the first time since our last intense argument that Weston called me Dad. He spoke in an extremely quiet tone. "How are you?" Suspecting a ruse, I warily replied, "I'm fine. How are you?" He coughed. "Good, good. Listen, our previous chat has been on my mind. Perhaps I was too severe. When it comes to family, I'm always a hothead, you know." I said in a neutral tone, "Thank you for your apology. Yes, if it's all right with you, I'd like to drop by your apartment. Observe how you're adapting. Help with something, perhaps? It's there." I could practically hear Weston's mind working. After learning about my wealth and new home, he now desired to mend our relationship, not out of regret or love, but rather in order to potentially benefit from it. I responded, "It was very kind of you, but I'm all set up. All necessary tasks have been completed." "Yes?" The disappointment in his voice was audible to me. "Maybe I'll just drop over and say hello. We haven't had a meaningful chat in such a long time." With evasiveness, I said, "Maybe another time. I'm a little busy setting up the house right now." Weston made several more attempts to schedule an appointment before giving up and said farewell, saying he would give them a call later. If he heard from Avery, who I hoped would not speak regarding the trust I had established for my granddaughter. I knew he would call. Gina waited a while longer. She didn't get in touch for over 2 months following the eviction. However, her car pulled up one day when I was gardening at my new home. Leaning against the rake, I straightened up and watched her exit the car, while gazing about my house in unabashed awe. Rather than say hello, she said, "Earl, you have a nice place here." "Thank you," I said coolly. "What is the purpose of my visit?" She took a step forward, examining my face closely. She remarked, a little surprised, "You look good, healthier than previously." I mentioned that a healthy diet, a good physician, and a break from ongoing stress are all very beneficial. Gina pursed her lips, but refrained from responding sharply. "Avery informed me that you used the proceeds from the sale of your previous home, to purchase this one." "Yes, I did confirm. For someone my age, it's far more sensible. All on one floor, no steps." She nodded as she took in the freshly painted front, the well-kept lawn, and the new garden furniture on the porch. "It must have been expensive." "I can afford it," I said plainly. With a sigh, Gina seemed to regain her strength. "Look, Dad, I understand that our breakup wasn't the best. Your deceit startled and infuriated me. But as time passed, I reasoned, perhaps we ought to try to put things right. Our family remains together." "Family," I said again, carefully. "It's amusing that you're just now mentioning that. Not after you expelled me from the house. Not when you forced me to pay for a place for myself." She protested. "I didn't know it was your house. You were never honest with us." "And what would have changed if I had?" I asked. "Would you have been more respectful to me, or would you simply ask for more cash?" Gina didn't respond, but her silence spoke louder than words could. Seeing the reality, I remarked, "You didn't come here for reconciliation. You came here after learning about my wealth and new home. Because you became aware that you had lost your opportunity to receive your fair share." "It's unfair," she said. "Without even giving me a chance, you're passing judgment on me. I lived with you for 5 years, and every day I gave you a chance," I said. "It was an opportunity to treat me like a parent, not a paycheck, every single day. None of them were taken by you." We stood there, staring at one another over a gap of miscommunication and bitterness. Gina turned to the automobile at last. "You seem to be doing just well on your own, but I imagined you'd be lonely and miserable," she whispered over her shoulder, "and that you'd realize how much you needed a family." I did agree. I'm doing all okay. Without saying farewell, she climbed into her car and drove off. I felt a weird mix of relief and sadness as I watched her leave. Perhaps it was better for us both, but it was most likely the last time we would see one another. The months that followed were rather calm. I moved into my new house, planted a garden, and discovered a hobby club where senior citizens like myself could play chess and talk about books. Avery came to see me frequently, sometimes spending the entire weekend. She discussed her goals to become a journalist, her desire to travel, and college. Weston called multiple times, each time requesting money in a barely disguised manner. I graciously refused, stating that my money had already been distributed. After that, he became disinterested in the discussion. Gina never called or visited again. Avery told me that he and Noah had purchased a new home that was smaller than their previous one, but still roomy and in a nice area. They had grown estranged from one another. By not having a closer relationship with me, Noah said Gina was missing out on a treasure trove. I occasionally questioned whether I had made the proper decision in disclosing my secret in this manner. Perhaps I ought to have revealed the truth to the kids gradually, so they could adjust to the fact that their father wasn't as destitute as they believed. However, nothing would have changed when I thought back to Weston's greed and Gina's icy calculating. They would simply access my funds more quickly. I was enjoying a cup of wonderful coffee. Real, freshly ground coffee, not the cheap, instant stuff Gina was buying. On a sunny spring morning while I sat on my new home's veranda. I was looking at the morning paper. Despite having mastered the internet and even creating an email account to correspond with Avery, I still preferred paper over electronic. I had spent the last few months carefully landscaping the garden, and it was starting to take shape. Bright flashes of color against the fresh greenery include tulips, daffodils, and early roses. The majority of the plant upkeep was handled by a gardener I hired, who came once a week to assist with the labor-intensive tasks. It was a fun exercise that made me feel fulfilled and connected to the natural world. The morning lull was broken when my phone called. I glanced at the screen. Gina. Odd. It had been months since she had called. What would have made her shatter the quiet? I pondered whether or not to respond as I gazed at the blinking screen. How would she respond? One more charge? Another attempt at manipulation? Or perhaps Avery had experienced something. I almost reached for the phone at the last thought, but I restrained myself. Instead of Gina, who had been avoiding me for months, I would have received a call from the police or the hospital if something catastrophic had happened to Avery. No, it was most likely another calculated attempt to mend the relationship, not out of love or regret. I hoped my granddaughter had kept the trust for Avery a secret, but maybe Weston had told her about it. Or perhaps they had chosen to try to receive some assistance from Rich Daddy because Noah was having financial difficulties. After a few moments of staring at the screen, I pressed the mute button and set the phone's screen down on the table. If it was truly something urgent, Gina could leave a message, and I wasn't going to ruin my morning with yet another round of accusations and manipulation. I returned to the paper and my coffee. A lovely spring day was promised as the sun rose over the garden. Birds in the bushes sang. The trees' leaves fluttered in the breeze. The world went on, unconcerned with minor human dramas. And I was a part of it, not a greedy father who refused to assist his son, not a destitute old guy who was dependent on his daughter's favor, but just a man. The 77-year-old widower, Earl Cunningham, was at last able to live by his own standards without having to pretend or defend them. I felt genuinely free and in control of my life and home for the first time in years. And that feeling was far more precious than all the money I had ever had or lost. The ringing of the phone ceased. I changed the page of the newspaper, sipped my coffee, and grinned at the fresh day. That's it for today's story. If you found it moving, don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.